The story begins as the Demon King launches an all-out invasion on the entire world. This invasion leads to the downfall of many nations, including the Gargan Empire, which has the largest population of humanoid warriors. As humans, elves, and dwarves slowly become cornered and face extinction, they are forced to take desperate measures. They combine all their forces and fight the demons like there's no turning back. Among them comes a suicide squad that manages to infiltrate the Demon King's castle in a final attempt to slay him. After a long and grueling battle that decides the fate of mankind, the Demon King is finally defeated, and the heroes of the Suicide Squad are about to escape. That is, until they stumble upon something even more ominous. They discover a woman shackled in chains, guarded by two monstrously powerful demons. One of the heroes, Theron, seems to recognize the imprisoned girl and decides to stay behind, instructing his two teammates, Kyle and Ursa, to leave without him, and they do accordingly. But on their way out of the castle, they enter a room where a mysterious crimson crystal is being stored. The male hero, Kyle, begins to approach it when several magic orbs strike from above. While he manages to block most of the attacks with his sword, one of the orbs hits him directly, leaving him completely defenseless. That's when Ursa, his mage comrade, steps in front of him and uses the last bit of her power to shield him, sacrificing herself to save his life. As Ursa disappears into nothingness, the mysterious winged attacker finally reveals himself before Kyle. Overflowing with rage and grief, Kyle charges forward in a reckless attempt at revenge. But even after landing a blow, his attack does nothing. The winged demon relentlessly launches enhanced deadly feathers at Kyle, giving him no chance to counter. Kyle's sword spirit informs him that the technique the demon is using is called Elimination, an unblockable high-level spell that destroys everything in its path. Knowing he won't survive the next strike, Kyle makes a desperate choice. He decides to release the full power of his sword's gemstone. The sword spirit doesn't object, willing to do anything to protect its worthy wielder. Kyle activates his ultimate attack, unleashing all of the gemstone's power, and strikes the demon with everything he has. His blade pierces through the enemy, ending the demon's life, along with the swords as well. Silence follows, and Kyle realizes he's the only survivor of the battle. Even though peace is finally restored, he has nothing left. His home, his friends, his loved ones, none of them survived. With nothing to live for, he collapses to the ground, ready to give up. But out of nowhere, the crimson crystal starts glowing uncontrollably. Sensing danger, Kyle pushes himself up with the last of his strength and walks toward the crystal to stop it from doing anything that could harm mankind. But the moment he touches it, everything fades to black. When Kyle regains consciousness, he finds himself lying in his bed in his own room. But how is that even possible? Seeking answers, he rushes to the window and sees his city in the distance, the one that should have been in flames and reduced to rubble, completely intact. As tears roll down his cheeks, he becomes convinced that this must be a cruel dream created by his mind. Then the door opens. His childhood friend, Lisa, enters casually, telling him to come downstairs already because he's been sleeping for too long. Kyle stares at her in disbelief. Lisa, of course, doesn't understand what's going on. She assumes he's acting strange because he has an upset stomach and comes closer to check on him, only for Kyle to pull her in for a tight hug, overwhelmed with joy just to see her alive again. She blushes and asks him if he's drunk or something. She tries to get away, only for Kyle to hug her more tightly. This ends up with both of them conveniently falling onto the bed, leaving Kyle completely flustered. Lisa, finally gaining some control, shoves Kyle away from her and strikes him with a punch to the gut. She screams at Kyle, saying that whatever he just did to her, she needs some time to process it and must prepare herself mentally before giving him a reply. After saying so, she calls him a buka and runs out of his room. Kyle, still clutching his stomach in pain, suddenly realizes that he's not supposed to feel any pain, as this is supposed to be a dream, which means whatever this is, it must be real. He notices something under his blanket, and as he lifts it up, he finds the crimson crystal lying there, making him realize that it was the crystal's power that allowed him to go back in time before the invasion had begun. Looking in the mirror, Kyle figures out that he is now much younger than he was. He takes a look at his body to see that he has no injury, which makes him believe that this is no dream. He takes a look outside the window to see that the land is back to normal, and since Lisa, the love of his life, was alive, he concludes that he has been sent to the past. This thought leads him to take a much closer look at the magic stone, but he doubts that it would have the power to send him to the past. While he deliberates on this, his stomach rumbles from hunger, and he rushes out to find something to eat. Fortunately, he was met by a full table of food which Lisa had made. The sight of this reminds him of the time when Lisa would always come over to help him and his mom with the cooking. Without wasting much time, he helps himself out by destroying every single plate. After a while, he ends up finishing everything on the table. At that moment, his brother, Theron, strolls into the dining room to have his breakfast. However, he is met by a table as empty as his brother's head. The thought of Kyle finishing everything by himself shocks Theron, but he chooses to let it go since that day was Kyle's birthday, even though Kyle doesn't see this as a worthy enough birthday gift. Meanwhile, seeing Theron, he is reminded that they were just in a fight together before his death. However, the hungry brother leaves to find a solution to his hunger. On the other hand, Kyle finally realizes that he has indeed returned to the past, but in order to get answers, he goes to ask his mother some questions. As she always did in his previous life, Kyle's mother spends her time at their underground library. She had been reading all night and had lost track of time. Ignoring that fact, he proceeds to ask her the question. Since she was an archmage, he believed she would be able to provide an answer to it. Just then, he seeks to know if a time-traveling spell exists, and she reveals that it does exist. However, before he gets excited, she goes on to tell him about how rare a spell like that is. Furthermore, she informs him that such a spell cannot be used since it requires an immense amount of magic power, one that even the most powerful mages do not possess. In that moment, he seeks to know if a magic item can actually be a catalyst to store an immense amount of magic power, and she confirms that it is possible. However, such power would require a being that has lived for centuries. Also, there exists the possibility of generating such power from having hundreds of lives lost. In this case, the deaths caused by the demons had led to an immense transfer of magic power to the magic stone that had caused Kyle to return to the past. What would you do with this stone if you could get your hands on it? While you think about this, Kyle's mother brings a book with a picture of the only magic item capable of storing such power. Just as expected, the magic stone in his hands was just the right item. It happened to be the legendary divine dragon's heart, which had been missing for over 1,000 years. This completely answers Kyle's questions, and he is pleased that he got to have this conversation with his mom after a long time since her death in his past life. Although she is thrilled with how matured he has become, not knowing that she is speaking to a son who is about a decade older. When the two are done with their questions and answer session, she stands up to go and eat. But when he informs her about the absence of any meal, she is left with no choice but to offer it to him as a birthday gift, just as Theron had done earlier. Now, I'm left to believe they are just broke. Later on, Kyle goes to a quiet place, where he looks at the stone one more time. He imagines what his old self would have wanted him to correct. Just then, Diesel arrives, and he immediately apologizes to her about the morning incident. He claims that he had a weird dream that led him to hold on to her behind, stating that she was Isekai'd in his dream. Hearing this makes her believe that he truly cares about her, and she forgives him. After that, he wishes him a happy birthday. Looking into her beautiful eyes, he is reminded of the incident that led to her death. Apparently, their town was the closest town to the demon territory, and when the demons proceeded to attack humans, they were the first to be taken down. The touching moment she took her last breath shows itself, and he had vowed to avenge her death. While thinking about this, he gets lost in his thoughts, and she calls him back to reality. The two sit together, facing the sun, but Kyle remembers that they would experience the havoc of the demon attack in 3 years. He takes it upon himself to find a way to stop this from happening, or risk losing everyone he loves like he did before. He is determined to change his fate and the fate of the humans. But wait, did he really have to stand up and say it like a wannabe top G? Later that night, Kyle spends his time documenting all the future events he can remember. He considers telling people about the pending demon attack, but is convinced that nobody would believe him. Since that's not an option, he is hell-bent on killing the Demon King himself, even though he is nothing but a pathetic weakling now compared to his old self. Regardless, he picks up his sword to test himself and see if he stands a chance. Kyle begins practicing with his sword, imagining that he's facing the winged demon that took his life in the previous timeline. Although he can dodge some of the attacks, he is still hit and realizes that he's not yet good enough to be the world's savior. The good thing is, Kyle still has 3 years before the Great Invasion begins, and he decides to take practicing with his sword and magic seriously, which he admits he didn't do last time. Using spells like Strength and Haste, he increases his stats and notices that he feels more powerful than usual, leaving him wondering if his magic power has increased due to the Crimson Crystal's powers. Regardless, he continues practicing, and now, with a boosted speed, he is able to dodge almost all of the attacks by the winged demon. But as he nearly closes the distance, he gets hit and is thrown to the ground. He figures out that his current body is not yet used to the strength boost his magic is giving, but he must keep going in order to tackle the doomsday. In the meantime, Theron and Lisa are keeping an eye on Kyle in secret from behind the bushes, and they start wondering what's gotten into this idiot all of a sudden. Theron's mom, Miss Layla, arrives to see how her son is doing these days and asks Lisa if he has been behaving. Lisa snitches on Theron, revealing that not only is he not providing for himself, he begs her for food every single day. Layla decides to hear this story later, as her interest is in Kyle. She can't help but notice from Kyle's fighting style that something's changed in him, something serious. She asks Lisa and Theron if something serious has happened, and Lisa, at that moment, recalls how soulless Kyle's eyes looked the previous day. Neither Lisa nor Theron is sure what happened, but Layla believes the only thing that can change a teenager overnight is if they fall for someone. Lisa is shocked by Layla's theory, and thinking it's not her, she immediately walks up to Kyle, demanding he confess before she beats the crap out of him. Kyle, of course, has no clue what she is talking about, and as he fails to confess, she, as warned, proceeds to beat the crap out of him. To make up for hurting the poor innocent fellow, Lisa cooks him a nice meal for lunch, and Layla and Theron get to join in on the food as well. Kyle reveals that Layla is his master, and with her here, he asks everyone if they know someone who is influential enough to control several nations of this world. Theron thinks kings have that kind of power, while Lisa thinks the highest-ranking priests have some influence like that. And lastly, Layla thinks the hero Randolph, who defeated the Demon King 300 years ago, has the power to bend the ears of many nations. The reason Kyle asked them this question is because he wishes to become someone like that, and realistically, his chances are slim to become anyone like that. The only thing he can become in the next 2 to 3 years is a hero, of course. That is, if he works his ass off. Feeling tense, he gets up, leaving everyone wondering if this idiot got hit in the head or something. Later at night, Kyle sits with dozens of books from his mom's library, trying to acquire as much knowledge as possible to help him become a hero. Theron comes to his room, having heard about Kyle's goal, and gives him the most generic advice about becoming strong. Kyle, however, states that strength alone isn't enough. A hero needs money as well, since both traveling and adventuring cost a lot. Furthermore, a hero needs connections with powerful people who can help in political matters. And lastly, the thing a hero needs most is luck. Theron understands, but what he still doesn't get is why the hell Kyle wants to become a hero. He's not curious. He just believes that Kyle's real goal is something else, and becoming a hero is just a step to achieve that. Kyle is impressed by Theron's intuition, but he still can't reveal his true reasons, so he simply asks him to trust him regardless. Theron hopes for the best for his friend and leaves the room, wishing him good luck. Now that Kyle's finally alone, he starts reading a book and finds some useful info that could help him make money. He also plans to meet a woman, a crucial encounter that he believes will surely help him become a hero. The next morning, he decides to go on a journey in 2 days and tells Layla and Theron about his plans during breakfast. Layla is surprised by Kyle's strong will and determination and asks if he has spoken to his mom yet. He has, and she cried a bunch. Layla then decides to make her good-for-nothing son join Kyle on his adventure, and Kyle is glad to hear it since he had intended to take Theron with him in the first place. Layla jokes right in front of Theron that he'll make a good human shield, and Kyle adds that he's indeed suitable as a sacrificial pawn. Jokes aside, after breakfast, Kyle breaks the news to Lisi, who is visibly upset to the point that she can't even look at him. When she learns that he intends to go to the royal capital for work experience, she asks to come along, but Kyle instantly refuses, not wanting to put her in danger. Still, she persists, saying she won't be a liability as she's been trained with the Oracle Warriors. Knowing there's no shutting her up, Kyle kisses her, then makes the promise that once he comes back, he'll visit her first and continue what he just started with her here. Lisa doesn't know what to say. Regaining her composure, she makes Kyle promise that he won't do anything reckless and will return to her safely. Then, under the trees, they share a long, quiet hug. Since he has a long trip ahead, he needs to prepare for it. He takes a walk to the market and brings Lisa along. As they walk, he apologizes to her for stressing her, but it wasn't really stress. She notices a beauty in the market. It's an elf, and she calls his attention to the pretty elf. When the elf turns to their side, she can't help but notice how stunning she looks. Kyle recognizes her too. It's Urza. He walks towards her, thinking of the best way to introduce himself again. He recalls that one day in his first life, she had told him her true name, and, since it's a secret, he thinks it's the best way to reach her. He calls her the name Excess before he realizes that was a huge mistake. At that time, only 3 people in the world know her true name, just her parents and her. So she sees him as an immediate threat. He tries to calm her down, but knowing her, he knows she'll make a scene. So he decides to make her sleep instead. He invokes her true name to make her sleep, and she rests on his body. As he sighs in relief that it's over, Lise burns with anger behind him. She accuses him of cheating, and he tries to explain that he met Urza when she wasn't in the world. But what does that mean? Because she's right there. Refuses to listen and insists that if he travels alone, he'll surely collect all the ladies in the royal capital, so she will surely follow him. He can deal with her another time. Urza is the priority. She wakes up and he tries to explain himself. There's barely any way he can do that because why would she believe that she'll meet him in 5 years? They'll fall in love, and she'll be the one to tell him her true name. A stranger knowing her true name is also very dangerous for her, so the only way she can be sure she's safe is to kill him. Kyle doesn't want to die, not when he hasn't even found the solution to the world's ruin. So he finds a solution. He tells her that he can make an application of contract with her and vow that he won't use her name for evil until he tells her where he got it. She's even shocked that he knows about applications of contract. She asks him if he knows what will happen if he breaks the contract, and he says yes, because he'll die. That works for her, but she can't make an application until it's a full moon, and the full moon is still weeks away, so she asks him to stay there with her. He can't do that because he has to travel the next day. Left with no choice, they make a decision. The following day, Kyle's parents send him off. Lisa insists she'll follow him, so he goes with Lisa, Theron, and of course Urza, who is following him because she wants to create the application of contract. He walks away from the path they were meant to take to the royal city, and Liza asks him why. He tells them he wants them to go to Sungard first. He reminds them of the legend around that area, the Magic Queen Labyrinth. He brings out the map and says they're going there. They laugh at him, saying no treasure exists there, and Theron even insults him that someone so money-conscious will only get duped. They insist the map that was sold to him is fake, but when Urza checks, she sees the paper is old and might be original. Since a pretty girl is telling them it could be real, they all decide to trust her. However, Lisa shows them that where the treasure is marked on the map is actually very far, and the labyrinth is very deep. He tells them he has his plan, and they don't have to worry. And for his plan, he hopes they'll dig their way through and won't have to fight. They arrive at the labyrinth and they start digging. Theron wonders why they can't just enter, but he explains that there are magic circles there, and they'll have to fight long wars. Theron wonders if he saw all of that on the map, but no, he hadn't. He had experienced it before, knew how much he had to do before getting to the treasures, and doesn't want that stress again. He tells them that he also didn't imagine that the first thing he'd do after deciding to be a hero would be to dig. Urza comes to distract. She commands them on how they should dig, and they all obey the woman commander. After a long day, they all go to eat a meal made by Lisa for them. When each of them takes a bite of the meal, they're shocked at how amazing it tastes. Urza even says the meal refills her lost energy. She sees that Lisa has hung a boar and asks her how she caught it. She tells her she caught it with her hand, which shocks Urza. Urza makes a pool for herself and Lisa to bathe. The pool gets Lisa excited, and they start to talk. Lisa talks about how much she's jealous of people who can use magic because she can't use it. Urza appreciates her great strength, which she used to capture the boar, and asks if she got that strong because of Kyle, which she admits. She tells Urza she doesn't have to be scared that Kyle knows her true nature, because she's sure Kyle can't hurt her. She admits that she knows Kyle is hiding something, but she's sure he'll tell them when he thinks it's right. They play like sisters until they continue digging. Urza returns to dig with Kyle, but confronts him about his true purpose. She insists that the other two may trust him because they know him, but she doesn't know him and has no reason to trust him. She reveals she knows the ring on his hand has something to do with his mission, and he admits she's right. It increases his strength. He keeps digging to try to distract her, and fortunately, he gets to the treasure and asks her to call the others. They enter and see the gold coins there. Theron runs there and bathes himself in the money, while the others stand in awe. He reminds them that the money is just for him to reach his purpose faster and not for stupid use. When he sees they're distracted, he excuses himself to find his sword. He goes to the sword and a bright light shines from it. The spirit comes out and admits it's been a while since she's seen a human. Will he enter a contract with this sword again? Watch out! The sword spirit goes into full NPC mode and starts a long speech to congratulate Theron on reaching here. But Theron quickly puts his hand on her mouth, telling her to quiet down, as he doesn't want his friends to hear them. Before she gets offended, he explains that he already knows of her status, that she is an exact copy of the late Magic Queen Sildonia, who reigned during ancient times, and the sword behind her was crafted by Sildonia. Sildonia asks how Theron knows all this, and Theron replies that he'll explain everything later. In any case, he mentions to her that he and his friends skipped all of the traps and riddles by digging a shortcut, and Sildonia feels disrespected because this dungeon is her tomb. Regardless, Theron wants to pull out the sword now, and knowing that once he does so, there will be a final trial, he requests her to handle it. Taking an interest in this mysterious guy, Sildonia decides to trust him and gets back inside the sword again as Theron pulls it out. She takes a moment to read his memories and then comes out, asking him if he's actually come back in time. Theron nods and tells her that he still has the divine dragon heart in his possession that was used for the time travel magic. Sildonia still has a hard time believing all of this, even though she knows time travel magic exists. But before she can ask him anything else about it, Theron's friends walk in there looking for him. Theron quickly whispers to Sildonia to follow his lead, and then starts acting like he's come here completely by coincidence, shouting that he's just found a legendary intelligent sword. He also acts as if he's meeting Sildonia for the first time and then introduces her to his friends. Lisa gives Sildonia some cookies to eat and asks her if she's really the ancient queen Sildonia. Sildonia explains that she's actually a part of the real Sildonia, and to be more precise, a magic life form created by Sildonia with the sole purpose of evaluating if the ones who come to this tomb are worthy of having her treasure. Kyle doesn't get why a magical being like her needs to eat cookies, and Sildonia explains that she's converting these cookies into magic power, and so they are not really going to waste. Lisa has more questions, and she can't help but ask why Sildonia looks like a child, and Sildonia explains that she had stopped her growth herself when her magic power reached the maximum limit. Sildonia reveals to everyone that there was a final trial that destroys this dungeon, and she was supposed to turn it on if she didn't think Theron and his friends were worthy of her treasures. Of course, she didn't do that because Theron requested her not to in the first place. But still, Sildonia gives him verbal approval, telling him that he can now use her sword as he pleases. She tells Theron to take the apport bag sitting on their right as well, as this bag acts like an other-dimensional inventory that connects to this treasure room. Kyle tells Sildonia his desire to use Sildonia's sword, asking her to give it to him instead of Theron, but she instantly refuses, stating they are not compatible, and both Lisa and Urza joke about how Kyle keeps getting rejected by everyone. Anyway, the group, along with Sildonia, heads back to the royal capital, as Theron's next goal is to buy high-quality gear with the infinite money he has now. He throws some money at the shopkeeper to make him realize how rich he is, and then buys the flagship product of the shop. Then, Theron tells the others to also pick whatever equipment they want, and shortly after, they buy whatever they like in the shop. While Theron shows off his flashy blue armor, Lisa reveals that she's bought a pair of gauntlets as she's a fighting type. Urza, on the other hand, has bought a spirit stone amulet. And lastly, Kyle has bought himself armor that honestly looks cooler than Theron's. Kyle, in his new look, tries to flirt with an assistant, but scares her off with his cringe words. Meanwhile, Theron takes a look at some magic stones for offensive purposes that are highly effective against reptilian monsters. The shopkeeper brings out a blizzard stone that activates an ice spell, and Theron decides to buy every single one of this magic stone, even though they are super expensive. He also decides to buy all of the healing potions the shopkeeper has and gives him 10 million jails for it. Once they are done shopping, the shopkeeper and his assistants thank Theron for making them rich and request them to come back again in the future. While walking back, Kyle worries that someone might spread a rumor about, like they robbed a bank or something. But Theron doesn't worry about it, revealing to Kyle that he intends to leave this city tomorrow morning. Learning this, Kyle and the rest of the group decide to explore the royal capital, since another chance to come here might never come. Meanwhile, Kyle uses this opportunity to speak with Sildonia in private, bringing her to their hotel room first. He then asks her about her opinion. Can he really change the future? I mean, he already has by meeting with Urza and Sildonia way earlier than he was supposed to. But anyway, Sildonia states that changing the past doesn't change the future. She puts it simply that Theron has entered an alternate timeline, a parallel world, which still means that Theron, with his actions, can make a change in the future and perhaps stop the Great Invasion. Theron doesn't understand why the Divine Heart Crystal came here with him. If the crystal came here as a copy, why is it that Theron didn't come as a copy as well? Sildonia theorizes that it's because of the use of a fusion spell. According to her, a fusion spell increases one's magic power by fusing their souls. And the reason the crystal came here was so that it could fuse this world's Theron's soul with the regressed Theron's soul, increasing his magic power at the same time. It does make sense to Theron, as he's noticed that his strength and magic power have doubled. Sildonia theorizes that with these cheat boosts, Theron will be able to use the highest level of spells in history, but mastering them will be what he should focus on. Anyway, he's gotten all the advice he needed, so he thanks Sildonia and goes back to reading books and stuff. Urza and Lisa share a room throughout the entire journey, and they have gotten quite close. That night, Lisa comments that the journey hasn't been that bad. She has learned how to camp well, and she no longer finds camping as difficult as she used to. She asks Urza if she isn't sleeping yet. However, it is a full moon, and Urza enjoys looking at the moon, so she reveals that she doesn't want to sleep yet. Lisa leaves her and goes to bed while she considers all that has happened over the past month since she started the journey. When she started the journey, she wasn't quite optimistic about it. However, it has been fun. Lisa is a cute little girl, and they have gotten quite close. Sildonia is very knowledgeable and always has new things to teach and say, which makes being around her fun. Theron, on the other hand, is just fun to watch. As for Kyle, she still feels confused about him. She knows he is hiding something. He is secretive, and when he looks at her, his stares feel as though he can see through her mind. Shockingly, she isn't uncomfortable about all of this. She is very fine with him. Just as she thinks about Kyle, Lisa sleep talks and says She is the only one that is allowed to be around Kyle, just as if she knows Urza is considering how comfortable she is with him. Lisa's strange expression takes Urza aback, but after she recovers, she looks at the moon and prays to the goddesses of the moon to bless their journey. She suddenly remembers that it is a full moon, and that is the day she is meant to enter an application of contract with Kyle. If she doesn't do it that day, she will have to wait another month. She immediately stands up and starts looking for him. Speaking of Kyle, he has just finished training with the sword and is exhausted. He lies on the floor, satisfied with how good he is getting with the sword. Sildonia comes to speak with him. She talks about the fighting technique he uses, saying it wasn't available in their old world. He compliments the sword, revealing that it works as if it is attached to his body. Sildonia is sure about that. Zarl's is one of the best swords ever made, and there is no other sword that is greater. He even tells her that he has used mithril swords before, and they are not that good. Urza arrives and screams at him. He wonders why she is looking for him at midnight, and she reminds him that it is a full moon. He doesn't even remember that they have to make an application of contract, and isn't interested in doing it with her at the moment. He tries convincing her that they could do it during the next full moon, but her real name is at stake, so she cannot take that risk. She commands him to have the contract with her immediately because she won't take chances. She goes to the middle to draw the contract line and reveals that an application of contract is just like a marriage ceremony. The two parties exchange their true names and make promises that they wouldn't use the name for evil. It also means the two parties must stay around each other. It is just like marriage. By the time she finishes drawing the line, Kyle is dozing off. She wakes him up and commands him to come. As he goes, he recalls when they both did an application of contract in his previous life and imagines that from that moment, they will be together. She makes him swear that he wouldn't use her name for evil, and after swearing, he moves closer to kiss her. She pushes him away and asks what he is doing. In his first life, when he did the contract with her, they were already in a relationship, so she kissed him. He assumed that kissing was a necessary ingredient to seal the contract, which was why he did it again. However, she reveals it isn't needed and is only used when it is a marriage ceremony. She is angry at him, and it activates fire behind her. She commands the fire to consume him for his actions, and he screams. The following day, the team begins a journey to Archon Town. However, on their way, Urza, Kyle, and Theron yawn due to tiredness, so Lisa wonders why they all didn't sleep. Kyle tries to brush her off by saying there was an unfortunate situation. He also stops Urza from speaking about how he got burnt. It gets worse when Lisa smells fire on his body, but he still refuses to talk. Theron, on the other hand, didn't sleep because he was chasing ladies, so Lisa can't be bothered. She asks why they are going to Archon, and Kyle lies to her that Sildonia has the ability to predict the future, and that they are visiting Archon based on her prediction. Sildonia knows he is lying, and her reaction is off, so Lisa notices and confronts them. But again, they brush her off. They arrive to a crowd at Archon and find out through Theron that the Princess of Archon, Princess Milena, a beautiful and kind-hearted Cinderella, who is the pride of the city, is visiting that day. Fortunately, the other members of the team haven't seen her before, and they are excited to meet her. When she arrives, she is just as beautiful as she was predicted to be, and kind-hearted too. She even helps a kid who fell. Kyle looks at her bodyguard and recognizes him. Sildonia asks Kyle if Milena is his target, and he says yes. Later, he meets with Sildonia to give her an update on his plan. In 2 days, in the forest between Archon and Sanes, Milena will die. It happened in his previous life when Milena clocked 16, which is now. She would be attacked by hydras. Sanes has recently been attacked by hydras, which is exactly why Milena visited, to pay her condolences. She would die on her way to Sanes, and it would be deemed an unfortunate situation caused by her kind heart. But for Kyle, it's her carelessness. Because why are you traveling to a city that you know is under attack? Sildonia, on the other hand, thinks there could be a political undertone to Milena's death. Kyle admits she is right. There is a person who benefits solely from Milena's death, and that is her stepbrother, Karenas. Shockingly, Karenas is also in the city at the moment, but he is socially awkward, so he doesn't come out. Regardless of how suspicious it is that Karenas will be king after Milena's death, The people just took her death as an unfortunate event and moved on. This is Kyle's plan. He hopes that in 2 days, he will successfully save Malena from dying, and that will be his first heroic act. It will sing his pride all over the world as the savior of the kingdom's pride. A hero needs recognition, and that is his first bet at it. Will he succeed? Theron comes inside, reporting to Kyle that he has asked around in town about Princess Malena's plans, but has found nothing at all. Kyle asks Theron why he's been asking around about this, suspecting he's overheard them talk, but Theron explains that he's fallen for Malena and is going to meticulously save her from any danger in the future to come out as her hero, and that is why he's trying to learn about her plans, to see whether she's doing anything dangerous. Kyle can't believe that he also came up with the same idea for different reasons, but in any case, he reveals that the princess will be in danger. Theron, in response, asks Kyle if he's become a fortune teller now, and Kyle explains that it's actually Sildonia who has prophetic abilities, and according to her prophecy, the princess will be attacked by a hydra on her way to the Saints village in 2 days. Theron thanks Kyle for letting him know, and declares that he will follow the princess around 24/7 from now on to make sure nothing bad happens to her, meaning he'll now stalk her around. 2 days later, the princess is off in her caravan to the Saints village with 2 town guards as her escort. Kyle's gang sees them off from the bushes, and Lisa can't help but ask how Kyle is so sure that the princess's life is in danger. As Kyle is about to explain why he is so sure, Sildonia interrupts him, speaking for him that she had a prophetic vision, which is an ability of hers. It's clear that she herself is fed up with lying, but since this is the only way for Kyle to explain how he knows the future, she's agreed to do so. Anyway, Urza asks Sildonia exactly how they are going to follow the caravan, as they cannot afford to be spotted by the princess's guards. And Sildonia replies that they are going to use another one of her abilities to keep an eye on the caravan. To do the following part, Sildonia turns into a hawk, shocking the group who never knew she could shapeshift, and Sildonia explains to the obviously confused group that her true form is the gemstone in Kyle's sword, and she can actually transform into any being using her mana. With that, she takes off, and after spotting the carriage, she shares her vision on Kyle's sword's gemstone, allowing Kyle's group to see live what's going on. Theron is jealous because with Sildonia's ability, Kyle can stalk anyone from home, and perhaps peep on women in their showers. Bro's idea and way of thinking disgusts both Lisa and Urza, and they are about to beat him up, thinking he must have tried to spy on them when they were taking a shower. Theron admits that he did try to do so, but Kyle stopped him, and Lisa is relieved, stating that thanks to Kyle, Urza's secret hasn't been exposed. However, Kyle accidentally blurts out the fact that he already knows about Urza's heart-shaped birthmark on her butt, leaving everyone to question if Kyle is a bigger pervert than Theron. This is of course a misunderstanding, which I don't even know how it's misunderstanding, but fortunately for Kyle, Sildonia interrupts them, informing them that she's spotted something strange. The drivers of the caravan, for some reason, have stopped the horses and are now attacking the guards. Kyle realizes that it must be Malena's half-brother Karinas's doing, so he quickly heads to the location, where the drivers have already gotten rid of the guards and have spread some evil ingredients on the ground that I'm assuming attracted the Hydra in the previous timeline that attacked the princess. Kyle quickly takes out both drivers with ease and ties them up, wanting to interrogate them to confirm who sent them. Meanwhile, Theron goes inside the caravan and finds Princess Malena unconscious, which makes him glad that she's unhurt. At that moment, a pack of hellhounds approaches the caravan, and it's up to Urza, Lieza, and Kyle to deal with them while Theron protects Malena inside. The hellhounds are too many for them to deal with, and as they are getting outnumbered, Kyle calls out to Theron, asking him to get the caravan moving, but Theron finds that the drivers cut the reins, and he requires some time to fix it. As if they didn't have enough trouble already, a Hydra approaches them from the forest, shaking the ground itself. Out of the 4 of them, Kyle knows only he can fight against this beast, so he goes into the forest leaving the group with the task of protecting Melina. While Lise punches the lives out of the hounds attacking her, Urza summons a salamander beast to deal with the rest. Meanwhile, Kyle is still running towards where the Hydra is, when Sildonia, just to make sure, asks him if he knows how to defeat a Hydra. Kyle, in reply, claims to have defeated one with 3 heads in his previous life, but he's unsure how difficult beating this Hydra is going to be. As he comes before the Hydra, it's revealed that it has way more than 3 heads, 8 to be exact, leaving Kyle wondering what he's gonna do now. Yes, he has fought a 3-headed Hydra before, but the one in front of him isn't 3-headed, it's 8-headed. He's caught off guard, not knowing exactly what he should do. Sildonia asks what their plan is, and if they should run, but it's too late to run now. He tells her he can stand against it. It may be hard, but he'll do his best. His mission is to save the world, and he'll do that no matter what. The good and easiest thing about a Hydra attack is the fact that its attack is straightforward and very easy to predict and avoid. However, there's another major danger, the fact that a Hydra releases poisonous breath. Indeed, the Hydra releases its poison on him, corrupting the entire area. The Hydra assumes it's all over when he stops, but it doesn't know that Kyle's leather coat has the power to repel that poison. After the poisonous smoke clears, Kyle emerges. He brings out one of the blizzard stones he bought and throws it at the monster. It causes the creature to start freezing. Then, he throws another stone for explosion and successfully cuts off one of the Hydra's heads. He's standing tall against this dreadful monster, and Sildonia even commends him, admitting she didn't know he could stand off that well. However, it isn't over until it's over, and right now, it's definitely not over. Another disadvantage of fighting a Hydra is its insane regeneration ability. In a split second, the head he cut off regenerates, and with renewed anger and strength, the Hydra releases another level of poison at Kyle. Kyle runs through it with his coat and throws another stone at the monster. He does this over and over again, but on each attempt, after cutting off a head, it grows back. He jumps during one attempt and cuts off 3 of the heads, but each one grows back and reattaches to the original body. Urza continues fighting her own set of monsters, but she's deeply concerned about Kyle. She doesn't believe Kyle can defeat a Hydra on his own. She voices her concerns to Lisa, who shares them, but reminds her that they haven't even defeated the monsters they're facing, so they need to focus on protecting themselves first. The trio keeps trying their best to fend off the monsters, but they are simply too many. Meanwhile, Kyle realizes that he has only 1 blizzard left and the monster isn't dying. To defeat it, he must hit the source. He holds his last blizzard and makes a run for it. He rushes to the core of the Hydra, stabs it, and places the blizzard into the wound. Enraged, the Hydra throws him aside. He slams into a tree. The monster tries to fight back, but it's too weak. It explodes, and its entire body scatters across the area. Sildonia can't help but appreciate Kyle. She comments that placing the blizzard in an open wound made it impossible for the monster to survive. He reminds her that he prepared for this life, and he's going to complete his mission. He looks at the scattered flesh around him and admits it's a gruesome sight. Around the same time, Urza and the others finish their fight and go looking for Kyle, but they're shocked to see him walking out of the forest. Urza is amazed that he defeated a Hydra single-handedly, and when he gets closer, he reeks of Hydra blood. They insist he stay away from them until he washes off the stench. He goes to the nearby river to wash himself off, and Sildonia, feeling his pain, tells him that she knows he wanted more praise, but didn't get any. After washing up, he returns to the crew and finds Theron checking the carriage. Theron discovers the drug that had been used to summon the monsters, and when Kyle takes the pack, he realizes that Sildonia was right. The attack on Melina wasn't random. It was an assassination disguised as a monster invasion. Urza informs him that Melina and her maids still haven't woken up, and it's as if they were drugged. Kyle suggests giving them a drug to counter the poison, and Urza follows through. They decide to wait and hope Melina wakes. Meanwhile, a darker situation unfolds. Prince Caranus is waiting for news of Melina's death. He's tapping his fingers and counting down for updates. Right beside him is Zentos, the princess's guard. When the time for an update arrives, Zentos orders the guards to be sent to the forest. It's late at night, and Milena still hasn't woken. Kyle enters the carriage in concern, and fortunately, Milena wakes at that exact moment. She asks if she's still alive, and confesses that she thought she would have died. She asks if they were the ones who saved her. And before Kyle can speak up, Theron jumps in to take the glory. Kyle smacks him and gets him to settle down before kneeling in front of the princess. He explains that he saw her under attack while traveling and stepped in to save her. Her maid, Arca, wakes up and tries to send the strangers away, but Milena calms her down. Milena attempts to go out and see the aftermath, but Kyle tries to convince her otherwise. Since she insists, he lets her go. She sees her dead guards and is overwhelmed with sadness. Lisa quietly comments that she looks and feels completely different from the cheerful young lady they saw the day before. At that moment, Sildonia informs Kyle that the guards from Archon are on their way. He immediately tells Milena to calm down. She's safe now. But Milena panics. She says they must run immediately before the guards arrive. He reminds her that the guards are from her kingdom and should be there to protect her. But she tells him that the person who wants her dead is the head of the 2nd Battalion, Zentos. If the guards find them there, they won't just kill her. They'll also kill Kyle and his friends. Kyle is stunned. He recalls seeing Zentos earlier and couldn't imagine he was that kind of man. Before they leave, Milena tells Arca to set all the bodies on fire. That will buy them time to escape. She instructs her second maid, Ninos, to ride the carriage, while Arca remains beside her. She offers Kyle's team a ride as well, saying she'll explain everything to them on the road. Before closing the carriage door, Theron throws the pack of the substance that was used to summon the monsters into the fire, hoping that more monsters will come out and will delay the guards. Well, the zoom off, but their journey is a quiet one. Kyle and the others are still processing everything they've just heard and seen. Will our hero get his accolades eventually? As they begin the journey, Milena starts to explain what happened. She insists that Zentos is behind her attack, but no one seems to believe her. She continues by telling them that her brother, Carinas, is backing Zentos in the attack. Kyle has doubts all over him. He asks repeatedly if Milena knows what she's saying, and Milena replies in the affirmative. She reveals that she heard from Zentos himself that they would attack her on her trip. The day before, Zentos had given her a drink, which she took without thinking of the consequences. After taking the drink, she felt dizzy and fell down. Just as she fell, Zentos and Carinas began to talk about their plan. Zentos commented that if they used that same poison on her, she wouldn't wake up and would sleep throughout the journey. They planned to release the monster on her and spread rumors that she traveled despite knowing how unsafe it was, which would be why she died. It seemed like a perfect plan to them, and it would indeed have been perfect if Kyle wasn't living a second life. But this also meant something was changing in Kyle's journey. He knew Zentos to be a well-loved and influential man in the city, and going against such a man would be digging his second grave. He couldn't believe Zentos could be involved in this, yet he could sense that Milena wasn't lying. Milena admitted she hadn't expected it. She knew her brother nursed thoughts of killing her, so she was always wary of him, but she also knew him to be a weak man who couldn't pull such a stunt alone. However, seeing that Zentos had sided with Carinas, the situation had changed. She kept revealing all she had in mind, which made her maid, Ninos, feel she was oversharing. However, they were all in this issue together, and there was no point hiding secrets. She explained that she could have suspected something, because whenever she traveled, she used Kilrin and the 5th Battalion, consisting of female soldiers mainly used for ceremonies. However, during this trip, Zentos offered to accompany her, and Carinas was also in the city, but she didn't want to suspect them unnecessarily. What this meant for Kyle was that he was now against Zentos, and his enemies were increasing. He informed Milena that since Zentos had failed to kill her, he wouldn't stop. Kyle was right, and Milena reminded him that Zentos was a very delicate man. When he saw she wasn't dead, he would find other means to kill her. This also meant he could accuse Kyle and his squad of attacking the princess and killing her guard. For both Kyle's team and the princess to survive, they had to stick together until they returned to the kingdom. Milena promised that if they could protect her, she would reward them. She hadn't asked what they wanted before Kyle told her He didn't want money or riches. He just wanted honor. It was a strange request for Milena, but she promised to give him that regardless. Now, they had to make plans to get ahead. They had two options. Find ways to return to Archon, which could be difficult because the 2nd Battalion was coming behind them, or go to Sains, a small kingdom with fewer people. However, if the 2nd Battalion found them there, they wouldn't hesitate to wipe out the entire kingdom. The best option was to return to Archon, and it seemed even more reasonable when Milena informed them that Kilrin would be arriving with the 5th Battalion in a day. If Kilrin didn't meet her at Arcan, it would cause some issues. This meant that if they went back, they would bump into the 2nd Battalion, but could meet the 5th Battalion for protection later. Kyle was concerned about how strong the 2nd Battalion was, but Milena reassured him they were equal in strength to the 5th Battalion. Since it was settled that they would return, they worried about how to bypass the 2nd Battalion. Kyle reassured Milena not to be bothered, because he had his ways. He used his sword to communicate with Sildonia, who checked on the 2nd Battalion and confirmed that Zentos wasn't with them. At the same time, news of Milena's survival reached Carinus, who grew angry with Zentos. Zentos reassured him that he would kill Milena, so Carinus asked him to meet his battalion and chase her to ensure she was killed, as he wouldn't tolerate mistakes. Zentos warned Carinus that Kilrin and the 5th Battalion would soon arrive, and if Kilrin didn't meet Milena in the kingdom, the first person she would question was Carinus, so he should be prepared. In the forest, the team prepared their magic stones ahead of the battle and also gave Milena bottles of recovery herbs to use in case she was injured. She was shocked by their kindness and asked who they were. They gladly revealed they were just aspiring heroes. The 2nd Battalion learned that Milena's carriage was approaching, so they set themselves in wait. They planned to strike the carriage's legs to slow it enough to attack. However, when the carriage got close, Sildonia dropped magic stones from above and sent fire into their midst, scattering them. The carriage passed right through the middle of their formation, with more magic stones dropping to the sides until it was gone. Afterward, everyone in the carriage calmed down and took herbs to regain strength, thinking all was well. Theron was glad they managed to get through that, and despite how foolish their plan seemed, they survived. Just as they breathed in relief, the carriage stopped, and they immediately knew something was wrong. Upon inspection, they saw that swords had struck the wheels. This meant finding another way to get to Archon since the carriage was damaged. Ninos immediately took the princess to safety, while Kyle asked Urza if she could use the Windwalker to help them travel quickly on foot. Urza wondered how they would avoid being caught by the battalion. Kyle asked Sildonia to check how many soldiers were chasing them. Sildonia confirmed there were about 30, fewer than before. Kyle felt calm and said it wasn't a problem. They just needed one person to stay behind and delay the soldiers. Urza was concerned, thinking one person fighting 30 trained soldiers was suicide, and she was right. However, Kyle knew they had no choice. It certainly wouldn't be him, so as Urza activated the Windwalker, he announced that the one to take the suicidal mission would be Theron. Theron protested, "No one wants to die," but Kyle didn't give his best friend a chance to argue. He activated the Windwalker and fled with the others, leaving Theron alone. I look forward to seeing how Theron handles this. Before the soldiers reached him, Theron raised a white flag and surrendered. He begged the captain, claiming he didn't know about the mission and had been deceived by Kyle. He even offered them all his money and the location of a treasure. The captain didn't care. The soldiers checked the carriage and, not finding Milena, the captain ordered them to dispose of Kyle's group and then search for the princess. Before they could kill Theron, he grabbed the captain's leg, begging for his life. Suddenly, blood splattered everywhere. Whose blood? I can't say. As Kyle traveled, Sildonia voiced her concerns about leaving Theron behind. Kyle revealed a secret the others didn't know. Theron was the strongest of the trio, and yes, that blood was the captain's. Killing the leader was the best way forward. After killing the captain, Theron removed the bangles restraining him and attacked the others. He cut down soldiers and unleashed fire and explosions everywhere. Kyle was right. He was the strongest in swordsmanship. Urza was shocked. Theron looked and acted like a fool, so she wondered if all his silliness was just a cover or if he was truly both foolish and strong. Well, his foolishness wasn't just a cover. About 90% of him was truly a fool. That made Urza calm. After all, imagine knowing a fool all your life and suddenly discovering he's strong. The plan had never been to kill the soldiers. They weren't the real problem, but now they had to die because of Carinus' greed. Theron was enjoying the fight. With only 8 soldiers left, he put his sword down and pretended to surrender, and they fell for it. He told them his mission wasn't to kill them, but to delay them. At that point, they had no horses, so there was no way they could catch up with the princess. He offered to let them retreat. They considered and decided it was better to live than die for nothing. They turned to leave, but Theron took his strength potion. Feeling energized, he threw magic stones at them, jumped into their midst, and decapitated them, revealing he never intended to let anyone go. With his part of the mission complete, he wished Kyle luck with the rest. Meanwhile, Zentos learned someone was interfering with his mission. He ordered guards to protect Carinus before riding into the forest. Sildonia spotted him and alerted Kyle, but Zentos noticed her and struck with lightning. Thankfully, she survived. Shocked at being attacked from that distance, she told Kyle, who immediately realized it was Zentos. Kyle gathered the team and told them Milena had to hide. He would face Zentos, but if things went badly, they should regroup with Theron. Still, he was confident of victory. Milena was concerned. Zentos was the strongest man in the kingdom, and she doubted one person could beat him. Kyle admitted he didn't want to fight Zentos, but now that he had to, he would win. Hearing this, Milena realized Kyle knew Zentos. She asked if it was just coincidence that he had saved her, but withdrew the question, knowing it wasn't the right time. She bowed to wish him well, and he went to face Zentos. When they met, Kyle tried for dialogue, asking why Zentos had come alone. Zentos said he didn't want more soldiers to die in the fight, and once Kyle was dead, he could kill Milena in peace. Kyle asked why he had turned against Milena, but Zentos dismissed the question. Kyle made the foolish request that Zentos step down, but Zentos drew his sword, and they prepared to fight. Zentos used his illusion attack, but to his shock, Kyle dodged it. He stopped and admitted Kyle was the first to do so. What he didn't know was that Kyle knew all his fighting skills, because Zentos had been the one to teach him swordsmanship. Who will win this fight? Zentos overpowers Kyle in the physical aspect, but Kyle, having the experience of sparring with Zentos 1,000 times in his past life, is able to dodge and deflect all of his attacks. As the swords of these two warriors clash, Zentos' sword is the one that starts to break, which catches him completely by surprise. He takes a step back and praises the quality of Kyle's sword. Kyle uses this moment of small talk to once again request Zentos to surrender, not wanting him to die in vain. Zentos, of course, doesn't know this guy, so he doesn't bother trying to understand why he's being kind and caring. In any case, time is running out, so Zentos decides to finish this quickly and prepares for his next attack, one he believes will surely finish Kyle. Before commencing, he asks for Kyle's name as a sign of respect, then goes for the strike. But Kyle, knowing Zentos' move, counters accordingly and breaks his sword in half. Zentos still doesn't give up, so Kyle now has to make the choice to end the life of the man he considered his master/friend. As Kyle deals the final blow with tears in his eyes, Zentos falls to his knees, accepting defeat. As he passes away, Kyle apologizes to him, stating that he had to do it to protect the people he cared for, and that, unfortunately, included Zentos as well. The next early morning, Prince Carinus is seen visibly frustrated and confused, as he has no clue why nothing went according to his plan. Kilrin, with her knights, enters his room followed by Princess Milena, who, with a smile, surprises Carinus by revealing that she's still alive. Before Carinus can even bother making an excuse, Milena commands Kilrin to arrest Carinus and interrogate him thoroughly. While Kilrin's knights handle Carinus with force, Milena comes out of the room where Kyle's entire party is revealed to be waiting. Milena once again thanks Kyle and his friends for saving her life. Kyle, in response, shows gratitude to her for placing her trust in total strangers like them. Theron, who's now as cool as Levi Taicho, acts cool as well, telling Milena not to worry anymore, as arresting Carinas will end her family feud completely. Milena thanks all of them for that as well and requests that they come to the royal capital so she can thank them formally. Accordingly, Kyle and his friends head to the royal castle where they are first treated to delicious delicacies, all prepared by Milena. While the girls are trying to act properly, Sildonia is behaving like a spoiled child and shoving into her mouth everything in sight. Theron, on the other hand, is as usual trying to flirt with women, and this time is busy making a maid super uncomfortable. Kyle is one of the few who can behave, and he apologizes to Milena for his team's lack of restraint. Milena tells Kyle not to worry about it, and continues eating when her father, Ramonas, His Majesty, arrives. He has heard everything from Milena's report and is glad to see that his daughter is safe and sound. Everyone stands up to greet the king, and Kyle is about to bend his knee to show his respect, but the king stops him, telling him it's not necessary since they are not in a public gathering. King Ramonas makes it clear that he has come here only as Milena's father, so that he can thank the heroes who saved her life. He brings up the entire incident and calls it a shame that his own son would do something like this. He finds it more disturbing that a proud knight like Zentos would take part in such a vile crime. Milena suspects that there is some other mastermind behind the scenes who manipulated both Carinas and Zentos, and her suspicions point to neighboring nations or demons from afar. That's why they must investigate this matter deeply, and she has assigned Kilrin's squad to do so. King Ramonas requests that Kyle and his friends not share any of this information with anyone because it would bring harm to the kingdom. Kyle understands and promises to never do anything that would harm the kingdom of Zergus. Milena knows that her father is still skeptical of these people, so she vouches for them, assuring Ramonas that he can trust them. Ramonas chooses to believe them and promises to award all of them appropriately for their heroic deeds. As he then leaves, the feast continues, and soon after, Kyle and his team go back on their merry way. After this incident, word begins to spread about the deaths of the royal knights. So the kingdom informs the citizens with a general notice that both the princess and the prince were attacked by a horde of monsters. And while tackling this situation, Zentos and half of his army lost their lives. To ensure that people don't get suspicious about Prince Carinas no longer making public appearances, the notice also mentions that the prince was badly injured and was sent to a distant place, Kortim, for his recovery. The notice lastly includes Kyle and his team's heroic deeds, and soon after, they are once again summoned before the king, this time in front of the public, for their reward. The king thanks the group first for driving away the monsters, and then rewards them with the Saint Randonnaire medal for achieving this great feat. Kyle wears the medal as the leader, and is then applauded by the crowd, who begin to see him as their new hero. This is exactly what Kyle was hoping would happen, so it brings a smile to his face, and he hopes his journey will continue this way so he can become a renowned national hero one day. At midnight, when no one is awake, King Ramonas is drinking to cope with his frustration, and he reveals that the reason he is frustrated is because he was the one behind the attack on Milena. He doesn't want Milena to be crowned queen ever, not because he has prejudice against women, but because he thinks she is so good and will make Zergus so prosperous that no one in this kingdom will remember him as the king anymore. He doesn't want to be second to anyone, let alone a woman. And knowing that there are only days before Milena becomes queen, he grows desperate to come up with something to prevent this from happening. That is when a cloaked assassin appears before him, revealing that he heard everything from the shadow. Ramonas is left completely shocked, but before he can make any noise, the assassin covers his mouth and whispers to him that in his previous life, he had made a suggestion to him during the Great Invasion to aid the dwarves of the neighboring kingdom. However, the king apparently refused because of his own ego, and the dwarves' race was exterminated as a result. That then acted as a domino effect and eventually caused Zergus's downfall as well. This confession makes it clear that the disguised assassin is Kyle, and he then explains that although he held a grudge against the king for what he did, he wasn't going to do anything about it. But yesterday, at the moment of Xentos's death, Xentos apologized to King Ramonis in his last breath, and that made Kyle realize that Ramonis is the mastermind working behind the scenes. That is why Kyle has made the rather easy decision to get rid of him once and for all, knowing that Milena will be far better as the ruler of this kingdom. The king tries to escape and unveils Kyle's mask before Kyle throws him off the balcony to his death. The splashing sound alarms the guards on the ground, but the king has already permanently logged out of this world. Finding no signs of struggle, nor any clues of breaking and entering, the investigators assume that the king drunkenly slipped from his balcony and simply fell to his death. But something so scandalous cannot be told to the people of the kingdom, so the official story broadcasted is that the king died due to a sudden cardiac arrest. Kyle's friends, who are unaware that he casually committed treason, find it suspicious that the king died the day after they were given their reward, but do not think too much of it. Kyle visits Milena to see how she is doing and learns that she is going to get married soon. Apparently, Milena herself did not know that she had a fiancé, who is Mazer, the third prince of the Gargan Empire. Zergus and Gargan's diplomatic relations are not great, as they had a dispute over the land of Karan. To get over this dispute, Karan was given to Zergus, but in exchange, Milena was promised to marry Prince Mazer, making this a strategic marriage that will form an alliance between the two nations. However, Milena doesn't want to go through with it and wants to turn down the engagement. But if she does so, what would happen to the land of Karan? Since there was no official document signed over this exchange deal, Milena believes that Karan will remain a territory of Zergus. In any case, she asks Kyle to inform Karan's governor that she is calling off the engagement and to come back with his approval. Later at night, Kyle is in his hotel room, still worried about how the Gargan Empire will respond to Milena's rejection. He discusses this matter with Sildonia, and she figures that the land of Karan has some other problems, pointing out the fact that the governor of Karan didn't show up at the king's funeral. Sildonia deduces that Milena is not only sending Kyle as her messenger, but also wants him to look into the internal matters and perhaps resolve them as well. Kyle understands and thinks this entire scenario is a good opportunity for him to gain more connections and fame. He also wants to keep as much distance as possible between Milena and himself, but doesn't explain why. The next morning, he visits Milena again, who hands him a scroll that he must take to Karan. Milena expresses how sad she is feeling over her father's untimely demise, but then quickly changes the topic, asking Kyle cheerfully if he would like to join the royal guard. She wants him to stay by her side as her personal knight. Kyle politely refuses her offer and starts to stutter like crazy, which brings a smile to Milena's face. She wishes him well on his journey and bids him farewell. Kyle leaves the castle, and Milena watches him from her balcony, hoping he will do well. Her assistant, Ninos, comes there, asking her if she has managed to make Kyle her puppet yet, to which she laughs, telling Ninos that she hasn't thought of doing so just yet, but if a time comes when she needs him by her side, she will do anything to wrap him around her fingers. A few hours later, Kyle and his friends visit the armory shop to get equipped with some new gear, and there, Kyle asks the shopkeeper if he knows anything about the land of Karan. According to the shopkeeper, Karan is a mining town run by the Blacksmiths Guild, and the guild master practically owns the city, having apparently caused some problems recently. The shopkeeper also mentions that Karan is famous for having shops with high-quality gear, which excites Theron, as he wants a sword that will complement his swordsmanship technique. After leaving the shop, Kyle's group begins their journey on foot, and the friends share laughs and giggles along the way. Soon after, the gang arrives at the outskirts of the city of Karan, and they are shocked to see that the city's been built in the mountains. Sildonia, their pocket Wikipedia, comes to clarify the misunderstanding, telling everyone that the mountain was built around the city, not the other way around. That doesn't normally make sense, but according to Sildonia, during the Zarl's era, this city was used as an outpost to defend their mainland against demons. During this period of time, high-quality ore veins were discovered, and the mages and saints of the era literally pushed the earth up using ancient magic in order to bring those ore veins to the surface, causing the mountain to form. And to summarize, Khura'in is literally a world tree-sized ore vein. Suddenly, a group of wyvern riders approach the city, and judging by their appearance, Kyle realizes that these guys are the Gargan Empire's wyvern knights. Suspecting that the wyvern knights are here because of Milena's decision to break the engagement, Kyle moves forward before something bad happens. Upon entering the city, Kyle speaks with one of the knights serving this city and requests an audience with the ambassador of Zergus. While the knight is verifying Kyle's identity and learning the reason he's here, Urza expresses to Lisa how uncomfortable she's feeling being around so many dwarves. Apparently, dwarves and elves don't get along at all, but Urza claims that the dwarves' disdain for the elves is completely one-sided, refusing to admit that her race is somewhat at fault as well. The ambassador of Zergus, Miss Miranda, arrives there, welcoming everyone to her city. Lisa subtly shoves Kyle forward so that he can speak to Miranda, and he almost falls onto her before grabbing her hand abruptly to correct his balance. This causes Lisa to get jealous, but I mean, she herself is at fault because she's the one who pushed him. Anyway, the scroll Kyle got from Milena had a letter, and once Miranda reads it, she figures that Kyle is here to meet the governor as Milena's messenger. Miranda expresses how glad she is to see that the new queen has found herself a rather suitable and quite overqualified messenger for her. The way Miranda's speaking about Milena suggests that she and Milena were close, and Miranda reveals that she indeed was one of Milena's diplomacy tutors until a few years ago. In any case, before moving to formal discussions, Miranda bows her head, thanking Kyle for saving Milena's life. Then she moves on to the main topic, giving Kyle the bad news that Governor Bax is gravely ill and is not in a condition to take any visitors. However, she doesn't think Kyle should worry too much because even in Bax's current bedridden state, he is under an official obligation to meet with emissaries from the new queen. So, she escorts Kyle and his friends to where the governor is, and on their way, Lisa can't help but notice how heavily guarded Miranda is. Kyle believes that the only reason Miranda is always on guard is because she's afraid the Gargan Empire might do something bad at any moment. Theron asks Kyle if he really needs to go along with them, knowing he'd just have to stand like an NPC while Kyle does all the talking. Not wanting to bore himself, he leaves to explore the town, and Kyle, like a strict parent, tells Theron to return before sunset. Moving on, the group arrives before the Gargan embassy, where an old man notices them. He is the Gargan ambassador, and his sight alone is enough to piss Miranda off. The old man's associate, Alzard, is the top 2 court sorcerer of the Gargan Empire, and he explains that they are here to meet with the governor of Khura'in as well. Miranda asks Alzard if he has a permit from the queen since this land belongs to the Zergus kingdom, but Alzard argues that since Khura'in is a self-governing city-state, they don't require Miranda's nor the new queen's permission. Clearly, both sides hate each other deeply under their fake smiles, and Miranda, deciding to call it a draw, proposes that they both go meet the governor together. But before heading inside, Alzard politely asks Kyle who he is, and Kyle explains that he is an emissary of the new queen. Alzard is delighted to hear that, realizing that Kyle is the hero who saved Milena's life. The man claims to know Kyle's parents, specifically his mom, Soraya, stating that Kyle looks more like Soraya than Leonard. Kyle is surprised to hear that, and Alzard further explains that he and Kyle's mom studied magic together as students 20 years ago. He recalls the fond memories he shared with her and is glad that he got to meet her son. They shake each other's hands as a sign of friendship, and Alzard wonders to himself if this kid will bring some fun in their upcoming meeting. Shortly after, they walk to the gate of the governor's house, but the governor's butler refuses to let them enter, stating that the governor is in a bad state and is unable to speak with anyone. Hearing that, Alzard and his knights leave, and Miranda can't help but worry that Gargan is up to no good. According to her, the current governor has been ill for the past 2 months, and now that the situation is rather dire, she decides to appoint Karen's best blacksmith, Gazus, as the new governor. Meanwhile, Theron is walking aimlessly in the city around hundreds of blacksmith shops, but none of their showcased weapons interest him. He becomes even more upset, as he hasn't seen a single woman anywhere in this city. Thankfully for him, though, a girl nearby is screaming for help and is being harassed by some people. Not even thinking twice, Theron steps in and punches the man in the face who's bothering her. He then acts like a cliché hero, asking the girl if she's okay, when she reveals that she's actually a man, making Bro question if he's gay or something. Nonetheless, Bro wants to play hero only if a woman needs saving, so he walks away. But when the girly boy mentions he has an older sister who looks just like him, Theron steps up again and destroys all of the thugs in the blink of an eye. The girly boy, named Go, thanks Theron and introduces himself as an artificer. Apparently, a client of Go's invested in a magic weapon Go was developing, but when that client learned that Go needed 10 more years to complete the product, he wanted his money back, and that's why he sent the thugs to collect the money. Theron understands his situation but doesn't care at all. The only thing he wants is Go's sister. Unfortunately for him, though, Go reveals that his sister is a married woman, and Theron honestly can't believe he was tricked by this kid. Just as Miranda had promised the team, she goes to the blacksmith named Gazus with the intention of convincing him to become the governor. She had expected that he would say no, so she isn't shocked when he indeed says no. She tries to persuade him, telling him that the Zergus Empire intends to create a good relationship with the Karan Empire, and they need a reliable governor who can fuel it. Gazus insists he isn't needed for such a purpose. If they need someone skilled and knowledgeable, they can find someone else. He is only a blacksmith, and that is the profession he intends to maintain. The conversation is heading to its doom, and the team, who stand by the door listening, conclude that they aren't getting anything good out of that. This seals Urza's comments about dwarves and how using a dwarf as a governor was literally a bad idea. She isn't shocked he is refusing. The door opens and Go comes inside the house, well, with an unexpected visitor, Theron. It turns out Go is Gazus's daughter. It is a reunion for the team, and Theron wonders why they are there. They mix up by telling each other what brought them there, and Go is even shocked to see Miranda there. Since Miranda and Gazus are busy, Go takes the team to her laboratory and shows them the potion she had mixed up. Theron wonders how he is human if her father is a dwarf, but she explains that he and his sister are products of their mother's first marriage, though their mother is dead. He comments that after his sister's marriage, their home had become lifeless. He makes drinks for them and goes to give Kyle his portion. Meanwhile, Kyle is reading and checking through the books in the house. Just before Go brings his drink, he opens a book and sees a drawing of a golem that shocks him and brings back memories of his old life. He immediately asks Go if he was the one that created that golem, but Go is shocked. It is just a project at the moment, the same one that kept him in debt. However, Kyle knew that they were golems. The technology to make them disappeared after the destruction of the kingdom, but later, the Gargan Empire was able to deploy that particular golem Go is making. They were much stronger than humans, and they helped a lot during the battle. Kyle takes Go to Sildonia, and she recognizes the technology that Go used in making it immediately. She comments that it is ancient, and Go replies in the affirmative. Looking at it, Sildonia tells Kyle they could exchange the magical items used for mundane ones, and she insists that she is sure it will work, so Kyle trusts her words. He tells Go to ensure he finishes that weapon as soon as possible, but looking at what Go has in mind, it will take him no less than 10 years to complete it. He tells Kyle that his request will be impossible, but when Kyle insists that he wants it done in less than a year, Go reminds him that he will need a lot of money to do that. Money isn't Kyle's problem. He pours out several gold coins from his bag and tells Go to spend it all as long as they get what they want. He tells him he doesn't want any other person to know about their business, but Go doesn't feel great about that since he has other sponsors at the moment who would want to know how the project is going. Relaxed, Kyle asks him to tell the sponsors that he failed and refund all their money. Go doesn't have to bother about the refund because Kyle will cover it all. There is indeed more where the gold coins came from. Go is glad that he has found a golden fish, but he doesn't know what it entails. Upon finishing with Go, they meet up with Miranda, who reveals that Gazus didn't budge, and he doesn't want the position. Disappointed, Miranda leaves, but Kyle has another business with Gazus. Even before Kyle could talk, Gazus insists that he doesn't want to have a conversation with them. Go asks him to hear them out, and he reluctantly does. Theron brings out his sword and tells Gazus that the sword isn't strong enough. Looking at the sword, it's one of the best Theron can get, but Theron says he wants something like Kyle's own. When Kyle unveils his sword, Gazus recognizes it. He admits that it is Zarl's sword, one of the best, and he didn't know he could see something like that again. He tells them he isn't capable of recreating something like that. Plus, he isn't in a good time to talk, so they should leave. Outside, they consider what Gazu said. He had inferred that he had seen something like that before, and that's shocking. Sildonia feels disappointed that she isn't one of a kind, but they can't have a conversation with Gazus as to where he saw the sword, so they plan to visit the next day. Upon getting home, Kyle considers the future with Sildonia. In the first life, Go's experiment failed, and as a result, he sold the patent to the Empire, who redesigned it into what was used in the battle. At the moment, they are meant to initiate the Empire about the weapon, but that will make the Empire stronger, and they don't want that. The Empire has gotten more suspicious since the Queen has broken her engagement, and the way things are going, humans may end up fighting themselves before the Great War starts. Well, until then, fingers crossed. Kyle gets a visit that evening from Alzard. It's a surprise visit, but Alzard just wants to invite him for lunch the next day, and he even says they can bring the other ambassadors. He comments that they can fly the Wyvern together, but Kyle wonders if outsiders can take the Wyvern. Alzard shockingly informs him that it was his mother, Soraya, who had created the technology that was used to control Wyverns. This makes Kyle shocked. Alzard says good things about his mother, and even how he wanted to be like her. Well, his mother is no longer that strong woman again. She is now a housewife. Alzard just wants to catch up with an old friend's son, so Kyle accepts. After Alzard leaves, Sildonia comes out and comments that when she met Alzard, she felt a strong magical energy from him. The following day, the others refuse to go for the lunch, so Kyle goes with Miranda to meet Alzard. They pass through a door, and he gets a very weird feeling. He staggers and returns to the door, opens it, and sees blood splattered all over the place, with Alzard dead. The killer remains there in the pool of blood with her long ears. She turns, and they see her horn. Kyle immediately screams that it is a demon.